Gamers are one of the most polarizing and unpredictable audiences out there, if you didn't know that already. It's more often than not that when we take a controversial topic and the audience is unevenly split, we get camps who disagree, and among them are individuals who take those disagreements and they slam one another, fellow fans, and that gets super discouraging. So sorry about this, but before we start the show, I want to acknowledge some recent events and celebrate one of these very rare moments when when gamers can come together, and I want to join in and I guess make my stand alongside all of you. It's not often when news comes out and the reaction is so one-sided, regardless of who you are. Because seriously, what is up with this color? It should have been way obvious that even though I figured the WoW team was trying to give a nod to all the Shadowlands bad guy colors and all that, it just didn't work. Now this deluxe Voidwalker here, now this is something I can get excited over. So we did it, dude. We made a difference. Yay! Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly. Hit the like button, subscribe for all the Warcraft content, and let us begin with the newest installment in the Warcraft franchise, Warcraft the merch game. Warcraft Arclight Rumble, the merch game. It's coming out on mobile devices sometime this year. It's free to play, and it plays out like any other unit defense games out on the mobile market. You deploy units and they slam against the enemy. You manage resources, you counter the enemy, you win a match, and then you get back to work for a little bit because, there's still a few hours left on shift. And then you jump back in for another few minutes to manage your team, bump experience points into your guys, and one more match, and then you're off to drive home. It's that kind of game. Quick play sessions, minimal management, and apparently minimal monetization. At some point, betas will reach testers' hands, but first in line was Towel the Tank, who dropped the most important info. The monetization is, again, pretty minimal. It uses the typical virtual currency route, but you can only buy so much in a week, meaning no day one whale is going to dominate the space. Coins are used to buy units and leaders, but you can't buy duplicates, so it's not one of those, collect 10 of these heroes from a random loot box and combine them to level up that hero person. It's not like that. So you eventually run out of stuff to spend coins on until, of course, Blizzard decides to create more heroes. And to be clear, we're only looking at the single player mode so far. There's no telling what the other content offerings like raids, dungeons, PvP, and co-op are going to be like, but so far, as a single player distraction, it is extremely accessible. I would go as far as to say, hey Blizzard, do you know how to make money? I'm totally gonna eat crow for that one, but don't get me wrong, the whimsical art style of this game looks to me like this game is geared to a younger audience who's not familiar with the Warcraft franchise. As for me personally, I'll play it when it comes out. It's free. What's there to lose? It's just like how Diablo Immortal is coming out in a month. It's free. What's there to complain about unless it's just not good? And then I stop playing, and then what? Now, I would have been more into a pet battle game, as they kind of alluded to, but if the reports are true that it was canceled and we got this instead, clearly that game would not have been received very well. While this particular genre is not my favorite, this does seem pretty fun, and I'm more than welcome to see the Warcraft fandom get a little bit bigger. If I'm able to do coverage on this game, by the way, I'm going to share my findings right here on the channel. Please don't go away. A new 925 build dropped this week, giving us some quality of life improvements, but also with some questions on how this is all going to work out. And thankfully, we've been getting answers real time. Seriously, you don't want to know how many times I've redone this recording. Folks have pointed out that assets like item levels that were reflected in Season 4 content have been reverted down to Season 3 content. This gives the impression that 9.2.5 will drop during Season 3, right now, this season. This is notable because 925's most immediate feature is cross-faction grouping and communities. It makes you wonder though, what's that going to do with the Mythic Hall of Fame? Let's take a look. As of this recording, the Horde Hall of Fame is nearing that 100 milestone. Meanwhile, the Alliance Hall of Fame is around that 10 milestone, which includes more America's guilds than the other regions. America, woo. Recall that Season 3 of Shadowlands started at the beginning of March, and the first 925 PTR went live March 22nd. Historically, even during Shadowlands, the PTR cycle has been fairly consistent at 3 months, meaning we can guesstimate 925 dropping towards the end of June. Again, historically, this is plenty of time for the Alliance to complete their Hall of Fame too, because they're usually about a month behind the Horde. At the going rate, the Horde will complete their side of the Hall of Fame as soon as this coming reset, if not the week after. The Alliance will hopefully complete theirs with a few weeks to spare. From there, the cross-realm thing gets switched on, the patch will drop, and the Hall of Fame as we know it will be dead. A few builds ago introduced what I call a mega meta achievement for having done like a little bit of everything throughout Shadowlands. Back from the Beyond awards the Veil Strider title, which doesn't sound very impressive, right? In fact, it's not very impressive, my opinion of course, but consider just some of the requirements. You gotta fully max out a Covenant Sanctum. You gotta progress through all 4 Covenant activities, not just the campaigns, but the activities. You gotta complete most of the Maw events and those activities, and conquer Torghast. This build nerfed one of the Torghast achievements, which was to complete the highest level, level 8 of the Jailer's Gauntlet, which is mega hard, unless you're a pet class, or in a pretty heavily armed group who can handle multiple boss mechanics at once. The requirement has been nerfed to where you only need to complete layer 4 of the Gauntlet. Still a challenge, but quite doable. That aside, I haven't talked about this yet, but I think this is a pretty cool achievement. And it's a journey that challenges players to have done, well, everything. Group content is part of the meta, including completing the raids in any difficulty, but also completing all the dungeons on Mythic difficulty, including Tazavesh hard mode. By the time you're done, you've got more than just that title. You'll have earned a truckload of achievements, pets, mounts, titles, transmog, and most importantly, the friends made along the way that you'll add to your battle tag list and never speak to again. This build, along with many blue posts, gives a lot of context of what to look forward to when Season 4 finally begins. One of the posts from the WoW team explains how gearing in the Fated raids, the remixed versions of the 3 Shadowlands raids, is going to work. As they reminded us, Season 4, this whole thing is like a big experiment. Maybe it'll be great, maybe it'll suck, but I do think it's cool that they're looking to go in a different direction with top-end gearing. I'll try to summarize. At the start of the season, all players will have an opportunity to take on a quest to obtain these puzzling cartel dinars. By the end of the questline, you'll have obtained 3 of them, and only 3. No takebacks, no extras, that's it for the whole season. These can be used at special vendors in Oribos to buy weapons and trinkets from the 3 Shadowlands raids. This makes a lot of sense, given that each week we're going to be rotating to a different raid, which would significantly reduce the odds of getting that one weapon or that one trinket that we want from that one boss. With these, we can simply buy them, and now we have a fantastic way to start the season with some guaranteed loot. There is a question of trying to be thorough, because, some folks have 2 favorite trinkets and use weapons in both hands after all, but I have a feeling the answer to that question is also about fairness. This whole feature isn't about giving you a complete set of weapons and trinkets for your particular play styles, plural. It's about giving you 3 boss kills with a 100% drop rate to get you started. That little feature is great and all, but it's something for the end of the expansion, not a typical season. On the other hand, let's talk about upgrading Fated gear. Fated, which is the tag given to raid gear dropped in the season. Now I see this as sort of the answer to how easy it is to gear up from running keystones, while raiders often leave with nothing but hope from the Great Vault. By defeating heroic and mythic bosses, there's a guaranteed chance of special reagents to drop. By combining 20 of them, you can create these upgrade tokens based on the bosses you've killed. These tokens can be used on Fated gear, including the items that you bought from those vendors, and you can upgrade them to heroic or mythic quality. Here's what makes this freaking crazy. The tokens work in a non-linear fashion, so if you happen to have a mythic token in your hand, you can upgrade a piece of Raid Finder gear to mythic quality. Of course, you need to have that said token, just keep that in mind. Personally, I'm really excited over this whole kind of upgrade path. In a way, it encourages teams like mine who progress from normal to heroic to still consider bumming around on normal for pieces to eventually upgrade in case they don't drop on heroic, and they won't. But I've also got to ask, since we're seeing a new PvP season, a new Mythic Plus season with restored dungeons, and now this whole fangled thing for raids, are these experiments only going to fit in this big 3 space, raids, dungeons, PvP? Will solo and outdoor players be kind of left out? Considering that so far, there's no new zone content coming in 9.2.5, it's fair to ask, well, why include them anyway, right? To which I would say, well, why not? They're not bothering you. So I am a bit concerned that beyond what are going to be Fated Raid Finder versions of raids and an item level bump in dungeons, that might be it for folks who just want to log in and queue up for an easy little thing. Now there is a bit of hope, some of it was just mentioned in today's news. There's the addition of weapons and trinkets to Cypher gear in Zereth Mortis, which gives an opportunity for a character to have a full item level of 252 from just outdoor content. The world bosses in the 4 Shadowlands zones, so not the one in the Maw and not the one in Zereth Mortis, will also be considered faded and will drop 285 gear. With a guess of 2 months left until 925 releases, there's still also plenty of room for a remix to Zereth Mortis and other outdoor content just like the raid and dungeon content has been. One last thing to mention from this post is this phrase here, Season 4's shorter runtime, which suggests a lot and nothing at the same time. Some are speculating this means there is still a hope of a 2022 release of Dragonflight, even though a limited access alpha has yet to start. Remember, this is the last season of Shadowlands. It's the lull before Dragonflight, and these seasons, aka tiers, they tend to be long towards the end. Season 4 of BFA was 10 months long, for context. I'd love to have Dragonflight in our hands sooner if possible, but need I remind you that folks were clamoring for Shadowlands to release sooner too, and just my opinion, but even with the delay, Shadowlands launched like 3 or 4 months too early. And now I want to talk Dragonflight and resume the ongoing conversation I've been having about professions, because just like some of the other news, we're learning new stuff as I'm recording this, and I hate my life. Throughout the week, we've been reading post after post, revealing new details on how professions would work, and I haven't been shy about this. I am extremely impressed with what's coming. Today, I want to try and be specific on concerns that I have based on what we know. Obviously, what we know is very little, with nothing testable, and no references beyond the developer responses, and worst of all, my own assumptions. But in case you missed it, I'll try to recap. Just try to bear with me here, because it's just you and me now. You gotta use your imagination to follow along. Max level gearing in Dragonflight is going to get a powerful yet optional supplement with professions, but in a much more welcoming way than Shadowlands with legendary crafting. As we do max level stuff in Dragonflight, whatever that is, we'll be earning soulbound currency, and for the sake of familiarity, we're just gonna call this currency Valor. Valor is gonna come from world content, raids, dungeons, and PvP. This currency will be used for crafting high-level gear. Thanks to the work order feature in Dragonflight, even if you don't craft stuff yourself, you can gather up what materials you can, including your Valor, set up a work order, and if a crafter is able to make the thing that you want, they can complete your work order with your Valor and you get that gear. And later, you can have this gear recrafted for extra stats. I'll have more on that later. Meanwhile, crafters will be upping their skills, gathering materials, and somehow, some way, obtaining special profession gear like an apron or funny glasses or whatever to up their skill level. There will also be progression specializations, which is basically a talent tree for professions. Perhaps you can spec into weapons and then become the one who makes the best two-handed weapons in the realm. So you go all the way down that tree. Maybe you want to easily make all the weapons, but at lower quality, so you spread your talents wide instead of deep. Whatever the case, crafters will be visiting the work order stations often, looking for easy stuff to craft to up their skill level. At some point though, they'll see a work order for a mythic piece of gear, and all the client is providing is a Valor, no other materials. So crafter, it's going to be up to you to get the best materials, have the best gear, have a high enough skill level, maybe have that inspiration stat or whatever it's called, and if you do have all those things, I assume that with the push of a button, you can make that high level piece and ta-da, it goes into the client's mailbox and you get the commission. There are new things we've learned just the other day too. Crafters will be able to recraft their gear after it's been made. So based on the example that they gave, if I, as a crafter, happen to not have a very high skill, but I can still make things, sure, I can make an item level 270 piece of gear. But after I skill up some, I can make that same item as a 280. It kind of warforged itself or something. And I don't need any more materials for it, I just naturally make better gear. What I can do is I can take someone's already crafted 270 and recraft it. Also change out the optional reagents. Basically, I can redo the secondary stats if I wanted to, and with my higher level skill, that piece automatically becomes a 280. This will be able to be done with work orders too. So if I'm not a crafter, I just use crafted gear, I can take off my 270 crafted piece that someone made for me and be like, hey, I want a 280, and I can set up a work order and make an offer for a crafter to do it for me. It's kind of like dropping off your car at the shop for a refit and you're just hoping someone comes along to take care of it. My guess is that you'll want to do this when you're done with your play session because you're going to be removing your gear for a bit and then you're off to work or sleep, and then when you wake up, hey, here you go. That sounds pretty cool. And if it doesn't work out, I'm sure you can just cancel the work order, get your gear back, and get back into the game. And there's more news dropping as I'm reading this off my teleprompter, ways that you can up your skill and your proficiency and your luck or whatever and more, but I'm gonna have to hold off on that until at least next week or so because this whole profession thing is getting really deep. So let's pull back a bit. Dragonflight is setting up professions to be like the big expansion feature for progression, only it's not an expansion feature. This is an upgrade to the original evergreen feature, which is crafting. Meaning, get used to this. This is not gonna go away after the expansion is over. You know how a lot of us wanted Valor vendors, right? Because we're tired of being so unlucky with the Great Vault and extra roll tokens and personal loot restrictions and, just not having stuff drop. This is what Dragonflight professions are going to try to solve. You are the Valor vendor. It just depends on what you're able to make. Imagine being the only person on a server who can make mythic leather belts because you decided to work hard at skilling up and getting that profession apron or whatever it was, and you decided to go down that tree. There's going to be a line of people that want this particular belt or whatever. Work orders are going to be sent directly to you to make that belt. Most of them, they're probably going to have all the materials, including the soulbound stuff. You don't need to add anything extra because you are the master crafter. They're not here because you have the materials. They're there because you're able to make it. And the faster you can get to it, the faster they can get their gear and start parsing. And yet, I wanted to take time to share concerns. They're definitely there. First is a problem similar to what Shadowlands had faced, dependence on the economy. Shadowlands and its legendaries went many steps too far by consuming vast amounts of resources just so people can level up their legendary crafts. That resulted in a flood of cheap base legendary pieces, which is nice and accessible for people who are broke, but it sucks putting in so much only to get so little value in it. And up until recently, that felt worse for newer players who were trying to get into the action. Dragonflight is doing away with that and moving to specialization points or levels or whatever, which are earned through a variety of ways. Crafting will still need resources though, and you do need players on a given realm to gather and make them available to the market if they're not going to use it for themselves. As far as we know, there's going to be no offline progression in Dragonflight, which means players are going to be challenged a little bit more to find ways to obtain materials. Naturally, people who decide to not be a crafter might just end up being a gatherer. People who don't do professions at all, but want to participate, well, maybe you should ask for a mission table again. We're probably missing things though. Maybe there's going to be a method through world content. After all, the new reputations could offer some fun activities even if you're not a gatherer. Tradable crafting materials are one thing, but probably the biggest concern that I have with Dragonflight crafting at the moment at least is also its strength. It's the return of these soulbound reagents, and as a reminder, I'm referring to them in this conversation as Valor. According to previous posts, Valor is going to come from all sorts of places, and under normal circumstances, players will be able to effectively stay in their lane of content, if you know what I mean, if they want to eventually craft gear for their level of play. So if you just want to do normal raiding, then you're going to get enough Valor or whatever it is in order to craft normal raid level gear. However, for example, if a heroic raider wants to obtain mythic level stuff, they want to obtain more Valor and want it soon, they're going to venture into Mythic Plus, maybe PvP and world content to get more of it because it's outside of their lane. On the flip side, if someone who just does outdoor content and they want to get a piece of raid level gear, it's just going to take a while. As for how long, my guess is that it's going to be long enough that a mythic raider won't notice or even mind that Frank the farmer is rocking best in slot in like the last month of a season. The whole draw though is that the mythic raider has a long-term thing to go for, which is to gear up and get all that mythic stuff. Meanwhile, the farmer also has their very long-term tail of trying to gear up too. They're just doing it in other ways. Those are all fair comparisons to make, I think. So a question that I have is, what happens when it's mid-season and you get a newer player or we switch to an alt? Well, crafting for them is going to be like that much less accessible because they're way behind on this Valor. Should there be some sort of catch-up? Should this be like a seasonal currency or what? Although, not to say that the market can't find a way. I would predict that the majority of crafters who are doing stuff in Dragonflight are going to be running mostly off of work orders, and I can see them hoarding a bunch of Valor because, again, they've been using other people's Valor for work orders, giving them the flexibility to make more basic gear for freshly leveled characters who don't need like those special stats and such. And I'm not doing a good job of sharing concerns about professions, am I? Damn, I think I baited people again. Anyway, professions in Dragonflight certainly look like they've been given the expansion treatment. I do wonder how extensive the non-gear professions are going to look, like inscription, alchemy, and such, but armor professions? This looks like a really deep feature. It feels like a different game altogether. You know, with stats to consider, there's side activities that improve professions, there's going to be a really strong relationship with gathering professions to secure special mats, and there's all these new tools to encourage player commerce. I do think that being on a small server can put players at a disadvantage, but I suppose we'll just have to wait until these are, really testable on the alpha and the beta, and we can do more than just kind of sit here and theory craft. That is the show, and Halandris is dead.
Kill it! Nice.
Oh my god.
That was a good one shot, guys. Well done.
Yeah, good shit. Have fun learning Anduin.
Woo!
Oh fuck, Anduin? Jesus fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. I got a phone call or something.
Oh shit! I just lost internet. Kicked my
What's
router.
that? What's that, Mom? The cat's on fire? Okay.
It was a pretty tight kill. It was challenging, it was hectic, it was obviously messy, and I didn't get gear, which is the law. Meanwhile, the team and I haven't taken on Anduin in almost a month, so our first goes at it, they weren't very good.
Good push, y'all.
Especially the priest healer.
Fuck him up. For the Ashburner.
So here's the big
God, doesn't. What the hell is that?
So focus the soul.
Oh, I just got
Holy
annihilated.
shit.
Looking at this broadly, we've been progressing like one boss per week, so at this rate, maybe we can catch up and make it into the Alliance Hall of Fame. There was so much to talk about today, I think, so I'm grateful to all of you who made it to the end. A big thanks to our Twitch subscribers who have been putting up with me gushing over professions like all week, and that's not gonna stop. I apologize in advance. To my patrons, thank you all, you're wonderful, and to you, viewer, you made it. You made it to the end of a weekly. Give yourself a pat on the back, and then hit the like button and subscribe for more Warcraft content. And now that we're here at the very back of the weekly, I gotta say this. We as human beings have a right to our own bodies, and the government has no place to tell us, let alone a pregnant woman, what to do, especially in extreme circumstances like sexual assault, or if carrying to term will harm mother and or baby. You know, my body, my choice. Farewell to my unsubscribers, and to the rest of you, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.